Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency and worldwide payment system. It is the first decentralized digital currency, as the system works without a central bank or single administrator. The network is peer-to-peer and transactions take place between users directly through the use of cryptography, without an intermediary. These transactions are verified by network nodes and recorded in a public distributed ledger called a blockchain. Bitcoin was invented by an unknown person or group of people under the name Satoshi Nakamoto and released as open-source software in 2009. Bitcoins are created as a reward for a process known as mining. They can be exchanged for other currencies, products, and services. As of February 2015, over 100,000 merchants and vendors accepted Bitcoin as payment. Research produced by the University of Cambridge estimates that in 2017, there are 2.9 to 5.8 million unique users using a cryptocurrency wallet, most of them using Bitcoin. Etymology: the word Bitcoin first occurred and was defined in the white paper that was published on the 31st of October 2008. It is a compound of the words bit and coin. The white paper frequently uses the shorter coin. There is no uniform convention for Bitcoin capitalization. Some sources use Bitcoin capitalized to refer to the technology and network in Bitcoin. Lowercase to refer to the unit of account. The Wall Street Journal, the Chronicle of Higher Education, and the Oxford English Dictionary advocate use of lowercase Bitcoin in all cases. A convention followed throughout this article. Units: the unit of account of the Bitcoin system is Bitcoin. As of 2014, tickers used to represent Bitcoin are BTC and XBT. Its Unicode character is small. Amounts of Bitcoin used as alternative units are millibitcoin, MBTC, and Satoshi. Named in homage to Bitcoin's creator, a Satoshi is the smallest amount within Bitcoin, representing 0.00000001 Bitcoin, 100 millionth of a Bitcoin. A millibitcoin equals 0.001 Bitcoin. 1,000th of a Bitcoin are 100,000 Satoshis. History. Main article: History of Bitcoin. On the 18th of August 2008, the domain name bitcoin.org was registered. In November that year, a link to a paper authored by Satoshi Nakamoto titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, was posted to a cryptography mailing list. Nakamoto implemented the Bitcoin software as open source code and released it in January 2009. The identity of Nakamoto remains unknown. In January 2009, the Bitcoin network came into existence after Satoshi Nakamoto mined the first ever block on the chain, known as the Genesis block, for a reward of 50 Bitcoins. Embedded in the coinbase of this block was the following text: The Times, the 3rd of January 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. This note has been interpreted as both a timestamp of the Genesis date and a derisive comment on the instability caused by fractional reserve banking. One of the first supporters, adopters, and contributors to Bitcoin was the receiver of the first Bitcoin transaction, programmer Hal Finney. Finney downloaded the Bitcoin software the day it was released, and received 10 Bitcoins from Nakamoto in the world's first Bitcoin transaction. Other early supporters were Wei Dai, creator of Bitcoin predecessor B-Money, and Nick Szabo, creator of Bitcoin predecessor BitGold. In the early days, Nakamoto is estimated to have mined 1 million Bitcoins. In 2010, Nakamoto handed the network alert key and control of the Bitcoin core code repository over to Gavin Andresen, who later became lead developer at the Bitcoin Foundation. Nakamoto subsequently disappeared from any involvement in Bitcoin. Andresen stated he then sought to decentralize control, saying, "As soon as Satoshi stepped back and threw the project onto my shoulders, one of the first things I did was try to decentralize that. So, if I get hit by a bus, it would be clear that the project would go on." This left opportunity for controversy to develop over the future development path of Bitcoin. The value of the first Bitcoin transactions were negotiated by individuals on the Bitcoin Talk forums, with one notable transaction of 10,000 BTC used to indirectly purchase 2 pizzas delivered by Papa John's. On the 6th of August 2010, a major vulnerability in the Bitcoin protocol was spotted. Transactions were not properly verified before they were included in the blockchain, which let users bypass Bitcoin's economic restrictions and create an indefinite number of Bitcoins. On the 15th of August, the vulnerability was exploited. Over 184 billion Bitcoins were generated in a single transaction and sent to 2 addresses on the network. Within hours, the transaction was spotted and erased from the transaction log after the bug was fixed and the network forked to an updated version of the Bitcoin protocol. On the 1st of August 2017, a hard fork of Bitcoin was created, known as Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash has a larger block size limit and had an identical blockchain at the. On the 1st of August 2017, a hard fork of Bitcoin was created, known as Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash has a larger block size limit and had an identical blockchain at the time of fork. Design blockchain. For a broader coverage related to this topic, see blockchain. Number of unspent transaction outputs. The blockchain is a public ledger that records Bitcoin transactions. A novel solution accomplishes this without any trusted central authority. The maintenance of the blockchain is performed by a network of communicating nodes running Bitcoin software. Transactions of the form pay or X sends Y Bitcoins to PayEasy are broadcast to this network using readily available software applications. Network nodes can validate transactions, add them to their copy of the ledger, and then broadcast these ledger additions to other nodes. The blockchain is a distributed database to achieve independent verification of the chain of ownership of any and every Bitcoin amount. Each network node stores its own copy of the blockchain. Approximately 6 times per hour, a new group of accepted transactions, a block, is created, added to the blockchain, and quickly published to all nodes. This allows Bitcoin software to determine when a particular Bitcoin amount has been spent, which is necessary in order to prevent double spending in an environment without central oversight. Whereas a conventional ledger records the transfers of actual bills or promissory notes that exist apart from it. The blockchain is the only place that Bitcoins can be said to exist in the form of unspent outputs of transactions. Transactions. Number of Bitcoin transactions per month. Logarithmic scale. Transactions are defined using a Forth-like scripting language. Transactions consist of one or more inputs and one or more outputs. When a user sends Bitcoins, the user designates each address and the amount of Bitcoin being sent to that address in an output. To prevent double spending, each input must refer to a previous unspent output in the blockchain. The use of multiple inputs corresponds to the use of multiple coins in a cash transaction. Since transactions can have multiple outputs, users can send Bitcoins to multiple recipients in one transaction. As in a cash transaction, the sum of inputs, coins used to pay, can exceed the intended sum of payments. In such a case, an additional output is used, returning the change back to the pair. Any input Satoshis not accounted for in the transaction outputs become the transaction fee. Transaction fees. An actual Bitcoin transaction, including the fee from a web-based cryptocurrency exchange to a hardware wallet. Paying a transaction fee is optional. 49. Miners can choose which transactions to process and prioritize those that pay higher fees. Fees are based on the storage size of the transaction generated, which in turn is dependent on the number of inputs used to create the transaction. Furthermore, priority is given to older unspent inputs. Ownership. Simplified chain of ownership. In reality, a transaction can have more than one input and more than one output. In the blockchain, Bitcoins are registered to Bitcoin addresses. Creating a Bitcoin address is nothing more than picking a random valid private key and computing the corresponding Bitcoin address. This computation can be done in a split second, but the reverse computing the private key of a given Bitcoin address is mathematically unfeasible, and so users can tell others and make public a Bitcoin address without compromising its corresponding private key. Moreover, the number of valid private keys is so vast that it is extremely unlikely someone will compute a key pair that is already in use and has funds. The vast number of valid private keys makes it unfeasible that brute force could be used for that. To be able to spend the Bitcoins, the owner must know the corresponding private key and digitally sign the transaction. The network verifies the signature using the public key. If the private key is lost, the Bitcoin network will not recognize any other evidence of ownership. The coins are then unusable and effectively lost. For example, in 2013, one user claimed to have lost 7,500 Bitcoins, worth $7.5 million at the time, when he accidentally discarded a hard drive containing his private key. A backup of his keys would have prevented this.